Good afternoon, parents. This is Shelley Macy from Hand in Hand, and I'm delighted to be here with you again on the topic of toddlers hitting, scratching, and pushing, other kinds of aggressive behaviors. Monday, Patty Whiffler, the founder of Hand in Hand, and I presented our initial broadcast on this topic, and we had some technical difficulties, but there are 20 minutes of that broadcast that's available to you on our Facebook page, and so that can give you some additional information and perspective. And I'm building off of that today. So if you feel like I've missed something or you missed something because you didn't get to see or hear that broadcast, please feel free to ask a question as we get to that part. So we have about 15 minutes together today, and I want to save a little time at the end for questions. Again, my name is Shelley Macy. I've worked with children for 40-some years, much of that with toddlers, infants and toddlers, and also many years with preschoolers. I taught in Montessori education and home daycare, and I also have worked with many Head Start teachers and child care providers in tribal communities. I was the early childhood education instructor at Northwest Indian College. I say the because for many of those years, it was a solo assignment, and sometimes I got to work with colleagues. My own heritage is Cherokee, and I am very pleased to be here with you today. So just following briefly on what we did on Monday, one of the things that happens for us when our toddlers start hitting or otherwise hitting, biting, and we'll talk a little more about biting next Thursday. So I'm going to try and focus a little more on hitting and scratching and things like that today. When our toddlers start this, they've been this adorable, precious baby that we have treasured and that has treasured us, really. And it's been this incredible relationship, as a parent. And when our toddler, sometimes they laugh when they hit or they take a look at us. I know my little grandson will just get this most delighted look on his face. He'll just look so happy. And then there's something that'll sort of shift in his face, and he'll bring his fist back and just be ready to wallop. And it's like, what's happened to my precious little guy, the one who just came up to me and loved me and hugged me with all the joy in the world? Or they'll do something. One little guy that I had in childcare would take his little fingernails. Boy, his mom would cut those fingernails, but he could scratch so hard, and his face would just sort of have a blank look, like he didn't really notice he'd done anything. And those little fingernails would draw blood, and we would just feel, his mom would just become so upset with him. She would get angry. And so there are a variety of feelings that we have when our children do these things. We can be heartbroken. This child who loved us has suddenly turned on us with incredible intensity. We can feel angry. We can feel just so discouraged. We can feel like we're a bad parent and we're trying so hard. Or we can feel like, oh my gosh, I have a bad child. And it just, just the sinking feeling we get. We can get very frightened. We can feel very ashamed. All of those feelings can become just this overwhelming sense that we get when our little toddler, our precious baby, hauls off and hits us or someone else, and someone smaller than them, and we don't know what to do. So the first thing I just want to say to you is you are a good parent. Your child is a good and precious child. And those feelings that erupt in us and the intensity of it is an indication really of what happened to us when we were little around anger, aggression, violence in the family, violence around us, um, the love that we expected from the adults who were often either way overwhelmed by their lives or kept from us really by the mores or the standards of um, people in their social position, or just any number of things that separate us from our parents, so that we were heartbroken as little ones, or scared, or frightened, or angry. Those feelings will sort of erupt in a tidal wave when our little one just does an aggressive behavior. So one of the big message here, and what I want to encourage you, is that every single one of us, when we're parenting toddlers, deserves and needs really to have moments during the day, and sometimes a large chunk of time during the day, where we can tell someone what it's like, what it was like when it happened, when our child hauled off and hit us. I remember myself, one of the things that really convinced me that listening partnerships were going to be life-saving for my children, and also for me. I grew up in a violent household where doing things I wasn't supposed to do resulted in getting yelled at or hit. And I was very frightened when my children were about 2 and 4, and when they would when the older one would go after the younger one, or the younger one would do something that was like, here's my precious baby turning into a little monster, I would just want to physically hurt them. And I had a listening partner, and she was so kind, and she just looked at me. We had both grown up in violent homes, and so when it was her turn to listen to me, it was middle of winter, and she handed me this big wool coat of hers, and she said, "Shelley, tear them up." And I was like, "What?" Just tear up your children. And I was shocked, but I knew that she was right. My children weren't there. They weren't going to get hurt. And I just got to rage and cry and let my heart break about how this was, what was happening, and whatever, I didn't really think about what happened to me as a child. I just was filled with these feelings. And it was really a very short time. It was probably 10 to 15 minutes of her listening to me. And then my time was up, and she asked me some question that wasn't related to this, and I responded and took a deep breath, and then I was able to pay attention to her. And from that day forward, my children I never felt dangerous to them again. And I had felt very dangerous. So it was a very big deal, and it convinced me of the importance of listening partnerships. Okay, so I want to go on to a little bit more about toddler aggression and tell a couple stories, and then I'll have we'll have some time to take some questions. So, okay, so what toddler aggression is, there's 2 ways we can look. The first one is sometimes they're just experimenting, like, whack, what happens when I do that? And a piece of information, oh, I can't let you do that. Or just, no. Or just cuddling them and saying, we don't do that. They'll kind of get over it. They'll just experiment, see that it's not something that anybody wants them to do, and stop. I would say that the majority of my experience in childcare and with my own children was that toddler aggression was really a signal for help. Here's a child who's got a bunch of feelings, just, and what can they do with it? They can't. When children are feeling frightened, and that's almost always the root of aggression, when they're feeling frightened, they can't think. They need a place to, let me put it this way. They can't think, they need help, and they don't know what to do. They're frightened, and the aggression is like, I have to fight for myself because I'm scared. That signal, if we can, to me, that change in perspective from I'm a bad parent and my kid's a bad kid to you need help. Let me help. Was like it was huge permission for me to keep thinking and not to fly into my upset with them. And so my if I can see this as a call for help, then I don't have to respond with harshness or with hitting back or with marching them off to the corner, um, or any of those things. That if I see it as a call for help, those kinds of things, when we talk very sternly or we try to teach them, no, we don't do that in our family, we do this. The best teaching approach to me was always to say, oh, soft hands, soft hands. And sometimes that was a piece of information they could use. But other than that, they can't really take in the information because they're so scared. So if we respond by harshness or with sternness or with teaching or with physical, what it does is increase the amount of fear that they're then carrying around. So whatever triggered the fear in the first place that led to the aggressive behavior gets exacerbated or increased by our addition of scary voice and scary action. And then they're more likely to be aggressive again. And then we're like, why aren't they learning? And so here, this new approach of seeing this aggression as a signal for help is extremely helpful. When a toddler does an aggressive behavior, probably our what we call it in hand is when we're setting a limit, and we've all talked about setting limits, but when we're setting a limit, we want to bring the limit to the child. And with a little toddler, we come over to them as quickly as we can, and we gently stop that behavior. And we might say something like, no, and we put our hand in front of that little fist that's coming at us, or we reach around to stop the block from flying, and we hang on in a way that really stops it. They actually need us. Or we say, oh, I can't let you do that. And we listen. We're there. It's like we're the attentive barrier to them carrying out the aggression. Now, sometimes people say, how can I get there in time? They're really fast. And that's where, as a parent, we often know the times that they're going to erupt into behavior like that. So we get to think ahead and go, okay, I know it always happens right before breakfast or right after I come home, pick them up at daycare. Or when does it happen? Then we can be prepared and we can get in there and stop them. That reaching in, that getting there, that stopping and being that attentive barrier then gives them the chance to let the feelings that are driving the behavior drain off. And it's often sometimes it's a laughter draining. They'll start laughing because they don't get to, or they might look at us and just get angry and have a tantrum, or they might dissolve into tears as they still try to do that. But that physical, gentle but firm stopping is a way to let the feelings that have terrified them get out, get expressed, and dissipate the fear inside. And really, the more vigorous the reaction, the deeper they can cry, the harder they can cry or be angry or laugh, then the better the outcome will be, because they'll be able to think again. The more they get out, the more they can think and be able to be that wonderful, precious, gentle, delightful, inquisitive toddler that they really are. So I had a couple of stories I wanted to tell, and then I'm going to ask you if you have questions. One is about a little boy that he was in our child care center at the college where I was working, and his mommy and his auntie actually were two of the teachers in his room, and they asked me for help because he would scratch other children, draw blood, and they had learned hand-in-hand approach, this idea of setting a limit, getting there, stopping it. And he would just stop and then he'd say, I'm sorry, because that's what he was taught to do. And then moments later, there would be another sneaky scratch and someone would be crying and he'd be looking kind of blank and what I realized so they asked me to come in. I knew him. He was a fun little guy, and they asked me to come in, and they said he doesn't cry. And I said, well, that happens oftentimes when a child has repeatedly been stopped. So and not really been able to cry, because we give our kids so many messages every day not to be upset, and there's good reasons for that. I mean, we are really overburdened as parents. So so I was doing friendly patrol because I knew it was going to happen. And it's like they brought me in at a time when it usually happened. And I stopped him and he went after somebody and I reached in and I said, I can't let you do that, sweetie. And he just stopped and said, I'm sorry. And I thought, oh, this is tricky. Well, then we went outdoors. They were outdoors, and it's tricky because he didn't show any affect, really. He just, oh, I'm sorry, and it was over. And then we went outside, and I was again doing friendly patrol, and he just shoved his friend, who flopped down on the ground. They're both 2 years old, and was rather startled. And I went to the little guy, and I said, sweetie, I can't let you push your friend down. And he started to get up, and he started after the little boy who was on the ground, and I just said, And he again didn't make noise. He started to kind of struggle. And what I realized was he couldn't really tell I was there. So I just moved in closer. I put my hand on his cheek, and then he started to get upset. And at some point I put my cheek on his cheek, and he just burst into tears. And he had a great big cry. And he fell on the ground, and I just lay on the ground with him and just stayed close, just making physical contact, cheek to cheek or hand to cheek, in a big cry. And then his mommy came out, and she was like, oh, I don't know. Yes, she understood that he needed to cry, but she wasn't sure. And so it was time for them to go, and they got up and they went. And so I went out the gate the other way. And he had been crying for a good while, so it was probably 10 or 15 minutes. And he came running after me, and he said, Shelley! And I'm like, hi, sweetie. And he gave me a big hug. And that's the first time he ever acknowledged he knew my name. So it was an interesting, you don't always get that kind of reaction back, but it was really very sweet. One other story I have is about my grandson, Tommy, who is just a delight. He's so outgoing. And I told a little bit about this when I was on the broadcast Monday, but we go to pick up his brother at school-age childcare, and the staff are delighted with him because Jamie's so outgoing. But what they do is respond to him as if he is 5 or 6, and he was really only 2.5. And they'd reach in and kind of tickle him, and Jamie would laugh, but he'd get this tense. I could tell. And I'd try and step in and say, oh, we don't tickle, and but they just, hi, and they're always a little excited, and Jamie is excited, but it's kind of, ooh. And then we go outside and get in the car, and I go to buckle Jamie in, and he punched me in the face. I was like, whoa, that was new. So I stopped him and I nuzzled him with my head, and I said, you can't hit me. And he giggled and we left. So the next week we went in, and I was ready for it. And I was again helping them not tickle him, but they still kind of chase him around, and they don't really run after him, but they kind of act like they're going to, and he's scared. So we get back in the car, I go to buckle him in, but this time I'm ready because I know he's going to punch me in the face. And this time I just have to go, uh-uh. And he started to struggle with the other hand, uh-uh. And he started to cry, and he just had this sweet little cry. And it didn't last very long, maybe 5 minutes. His brothers just sort of hanging out. And then we went home. And then when I went in next time, I was much more verbal with the staff that I wanted that he's getting scared when you do this. So he likes you so much, but he gets a little scared. So can you just tone it down a little? And they did. Okay, I know our time is just about up, and I want to check and see if there are any questions. And I'm getting used to doing this Facebook Live, so it's oh good. Hand in Hand posted a couple of articles about secret fears driving your child's aggression. One on setting effective limits with children and foster cooperation. Well, that's great. And if listening partnership is a new term for you, so there's a lot of references here for you. That's great. It's fun to have that kind of backup and support. Someone said, this is off topic, but I love all the pictures of your kiddos behind you. Yes, my grandchildren and my children and my parents. So is there anyone who has a question or comment? Oh, I see. I can show comments. Yeah, so there's one about listening partnerships. Maxine asks, how long would you let them cry it out? You know, my rule of thumb, let's see if I can get rid of this comment. It depends just so much on how much time, attention, and space I have. I'm sorry. There, okay. So let me reframe it a little bit. The work that what you're doing by setting the limit and giving them room to release the feelings is you're giving them space to go inside and do the internal work of cleaning up old fear. So it's kind of like when you're cleaning house and you're doing the laundry and you're vacuuming and stuff. How much time do you have? How much energy do you have? And especially if I've prepared myself, if I've got, okay, I know this happens and I'm going to actually be ready this time instead of having a 3-course, I don't have 3-course breakfast, but instead of cooking breakfast, we're going to plan on breakfast cereal because I know every morning there's a meltdown about getting ready to go to daycare. So if I set things up, maybe even get up a little early so that I have time, attention, and the kind of the perspective that this is a good thing that's going to happen, then I can allow for a larger amount of time. And if and my analogy about cleaning house, if I have set things aside so I can deep clean these carpets that have been driving me nuts, or get to the corners of the kitchen, then the more I can get done, the easier the house is going to be to keep clean after this. So if you give the more that I'm able to give my child a chance to kind of deep clean what they're carrying around inside, then the easier their life is going to get, and the easier mine is going to get. How long have I listened to children? Anywhere from a few moments to an hour, even an hour and a half. My own son had a very long birth, and he just sat on a lot of fear. He was so precious, and then he would just turn and be just hurting his sister, and I just would, like I told you about the listening partnership I had, so I wouldn't tear him up. When I could figure out how to set a limit so he could actually release some of that, boy, I would want to take advantage of it as fully as I could. And children basically, they'll use the time and attention that you're able to give them so they can do that work, and they'll trust you more than ever, although it can feel like they're going to hate you for the rest of their life. It's a funny thing, but in order to do that release, it's like they have to aim their fears at somebody or something, and you stand in for whatever it was that terrified them. So I remember when I was doing daycare, I had a little guy who said, "I hate you. You're the worst teacher in the world." And he said, "You have BO." I don't know where he got that. And I just had to say, "But I still love you, and I'll always love you. And I can't let you do that." Okay, I think we have time for, well, I'm going to take time for one more question if there is one. I will have to tell hand in hand, I have to tell Velma that I'm not very good at 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, I'll just say I appreciate parents so much. We work so hard in our, it's like we have our hearts on our sleeves or running around the room, and the love that we pour into our children always matters. And one of the biggest reasons why our little ones come at us with their feelings, why they take it out on us, is not because they are trying to put something on us, but because they trust us so much. So if your child is directing aggressive behavior at you, that's the highest of compliments. They're saying, "I am carrying this around, and I know that you want me free. So I'm going to show you what it is that I'm carrying around. Can you help me?" So it's not about them wanting to hurt you. It's about them saying, "I know you want to help me." And again, I refer you to the articles on the Hand in Hand website. And there's also a lovely, one of those self-guided courses that you can take about toddler aggression. I think they're $39. They're just wonderful. And various, the Parents Club and various things that you can do. Thank you very much for being part of this time with me. And next Thursday at 1 o'clock, or the same time as today, wherever you are in the time zone. So next Thursday, the 27th, we'll be looking at biting and why, especially those times when you're so cuddly and warm, and then all of a sudden there's a painful bite. All right. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again Thursday, if you can. Bye for now.